I'm staring at the photo she just posted when my phone rings with news that will shatter everything I thought I knew about my life. But I don't know that yet because I'm still looking at Sarah's radiant smile as she holds a champagne flute against a backdrop of crystal blue waters, her skin glowing with that golden tan that comes from days of Caribbean sunshine. And I'm wondering why she looks so happy when I've been drowning in grief for the past week since my father's funeral. The photo is timestamped 2 hours ago, Turks and Caicos, and I can see the shadow of a man's arm around her waist, just barely visible at the edge of the frame. And my brain is trying to process this information while my cousin Michael is calling to check on me because everyone in our family knows that losing Dad has left me completely devastated. The kind of devastated that makes you forget to eat and sleep and function like a normal human being. David, how are you holding up? Michael's voice carries that careful tone people use when they're afraid you might break completely, and I realize I'm supposed to answer him, but I'm still staring at my wife's Instagram story, scrolling through image after image of paradise, each one more impossible to reconcile with the story she told me about being trapped in emergency client meetings that were so critical she couldn't attend her father-in-law's funeral. I pause because I don't know how to finish that sentence anymore, not when I'm looking at evidence that my wife of 5 years, the woman who promised to love me in sickness and in health, in good times and bad, chose to spend my grief leave creating memories with someone else while I was selecting caskets and writing eulogies and trying to comfort my mother, who keeps asking why Sarah couldn't be here to support me through this. 3 weeks ago, everything made sense in my life, or at least I thought it did, because Sarah and I had what everyone called the perfect marriage, the kind that makes other couples jealous at dinner parties, the kind where we finished each other's sentences and had matching coffee mugs and a joint checking account and a 10-year plan that included children and a bigger house and growing old together in the suburbs of Connecticut, where we'd built our careful, comfortable life. I'm David Morrison, Senior Financial Analyst at Hartwell Associates, the kind of prestigious investment firm where wearing the right watch matters almost as much as your quarterly numbers, and I come from the kind of old Connecticut family where our name is on buildings and scholarship funds, but I chose to make my own way in the world rather than coast on family money, a decision my father respected even though it meant starting at the bottom and working 80-hour weeks to prove I belonged in boardrooms where deals worth millions get decided over handshakes and single malt scotch. Sarah Elizabeth Chen, now Morrison, marketing director at a mid-tier advertising agency, the woman I fell in love with during our junior year at Yale when she was the smartest person in our economic study group and the only one who could make me laugh during finals week, came from the kind of middle-class family where her parents worked double shifts to afford her education, and she carried that hunger for success like a torch, always pushing for more, better, higher, faster, never quite satisfied with what we had, but always planning for what we could achieve together. Our house in West Hartford is everything we dreamed about when we were broke graduate students eating ramen and sharing textbooks, a colonial with original hardwood floors, and a kitchen island where we'd planned to teach our future children how to make pancakes on Sunday mornings, and we'd filled it with furniture from Pottery Barn in Williams-Sonoma, creating the kind of life that looks perfect in Christmas cards and social media posts, the kind of life that made our college friends envious and our parents proud. But looking at these photos now, I'm remembering things I pushed aside, small moments that didn't seem important at the time, but are suddenly crystallizing into a pattern I was too trusting or too naive or too busy to recognize, like how Sarah started working late more often in the past 6 months, how she suddenly developed an interest in yoga and expensive workout clothes, how she began criticizing my family's traditions as stuffy and old-fashioned, how she started talking about needing space to grow and individual identity within marriage. The signs were there, scattered like breadcrumbs through our daily life, but I was too focused on building our future to notice she was already planning her exit, too committed to our shared dreams to see that she was dreaming different dreams with someone else, too in love with who I thought she was to notice who she was becoming. Marcus Chen, no relation despite the shared surname, senior account executive at Sarah's agency, the kind of man who wears expensive cologne and drives a leased BMW and talks about disrupting the industry while posting motivational quotes on LinkedIn, started appearing in Sarah's work stories about 6 months ago, always described as brilliant and innovative and such a refreshing perspective, and I should have known then, should have recognized the way her voice changed when she said his name, the way she suddenly started caring about her appearance for casual Friday meetings. I remember the night she came home glowing from what she called a breakthrough strategy session with Marcus. how she couldn't stop talking about his insights into millennial marketing trends, how she'd stayed until midnight working on a campaign that suddenly felt more important than any project she'd ever handled. And I was happy for her because I thought her professional growth was good for our marriage, good for our future, never imagining that her growth was leading her away from me. The work conference in Boston 3 months ago, where she said she learned so much about integrated marketing approaches, where she came back with new ideas about personal branding and authentic self-expression, where she apparently learned that authentic self-expression included lying to your husband about emergency client meetings that require missing your father-in-law's funeral so you can vacation in the Caribbean with your affair partner. I'm scrolling back through her social media now, looking for clues I missed, and I can see them everywhere once I know what to look for. The gradual increase in professional photos, the carefully curated lifestyle content, the gym selfies and healthy breakfast posts, the subtle signs of a woman preparing to rebrand herself as single, available, worthy of a man who could give her the excitement and passion she decided our stable, loving marriage was somehow lacking. The credit card statements I never bothered to check because we trusted each other completely, because financial transparency was one of the foundations of our marriage, because I never imagined she would use our joint accounts to fund her betrayal, are probably full of charges I didn't recognize, restaurants I've never been to, hotels I've never seen, gifts I never received. My father died 8 days ago of a massive heart attack while playing golf at the country club where our family has been members for 3 generations. Died instantly according to the doctors. Never knew what hit him. Never got to say goodbye. Never got to meet the grandchildren Sarah and I had planned to give him. And I've been drowning in grief and logistics and the impossible task of comforting my mother who keeps asking why bad things happen to good people. 2 weeks of grief leave, approved immediately by my managing partner who knew my father personally and understood that losing him would require time to heal, time to handle the estate, time to process the end of the most important relationship in my life. And Sarah kissed me goodbye that first morning, promised she'd handle everything at home while I focused on family, said she'd be there for me when I got back, said she understood that I needed to be strong for my mother and siblings. "I wish I could be there with you," she said, her hand on my cheek, her eyes filled with what I thought was genuine sympathy. But this client crisis just exploded, and I'm the only one who can handle it. You know how important this account is for my career? I'll make it up to you when you get back, I promise. The client crisis that apparently required a vacation wardrobe and sunscreen and couples spa treatments, the emergency meetings that took place on pristine beaches while I was selecting flowers for my father's casket and trying to write a eulogy that could somehow capture 34 years of love and guidance and unconditional duck Tom and ATN support. I spent that first week in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by photos of our family, going through my father's papers and personal effects, finding love letters he wrote to my mother during their courtship, evidence of a marriage that lasted 35 years because they chose each other every single day, because they built their life on honesty and loyalty and the kind of deep partnership that weathers every storm. The funeral was beautiful and terrible, filled with hundreds of people whose lives my father had touched, colleagues and friends and family members who shared stories about his kindness and integrity and unwavering commitment to the people he loved. And I stood at the podium talking about the man who taught me how to be a husband, how to be a father, how to be the kind of man who keeps his promises and protects his family and never wavers in his devotion to the people who matter most. Sarah should have been there, holding my hand during the service, meeting the relatives she'd only heard about, understanding the foundation of values that shaped me, seeing the kind of marriage I wanted us to have, but instead she was posting sunset cocktails and beach selfies and living her best life while I was learning what it means to truly grieve. The phone calls that went to voicemail, the text messages that got one-word responses hours later, the growing distance that I attributed to my emotional state rather than her physical location, the feeling that I was mourning alone even though I was surrounded by family who loved me, because the one person who was supposed to be my partner in all things had chosen to be somewhere else entirely. And now I'm looking at proof that while I was crying over my father's grave, she was laughing on a beach with another man, while I was comforting my grieving mother. She was being comforted by arms that weren't mine, while I was honoring the memory of the most faithful man I've ever known. She was betraying every vow we made to each other. Michael is still talking, but I'm not hearing him anymore because something fundamental has shifted in my understanding of reality. Something that feels like waking up from a dream, or maybe waking up into a nightmare. And I realize that I've been mourning the wrong loss entirely because my marriage has been dead longer than my father has. David, are you there? Michael's voice cuts through my mental fog and I realize I need to respond, need to sound like a grieving son rather than a man whose world is disintegrating in real time, need to maintain the facade of normal grief while I process this betrayal that feels worse than death because death is honest and this is the most dishonest thing I've ever experienced. Sorry, I'm here, I managed to say, my voice sounding strange to my own ears, hollow and distant like it's coming from someone else's throat. I was just looking at some photos Dad left behind, you know how it is. Of course, take all the time you need, Michael says with the kind of gentle understanding that makes me want to scream because he thinks I'm processing normal grief when I'm actually processing the complete destruction of everything I thought I knew about my life. Mom wanted me to tell you that dinner is at 6 if you feel up to it. Nothing formal, just family. Family, the concept that used to include Sarah, the woman who was supposed to become the mother of my children, the grandmother to my father's great-grandchildren, the person who would stand beside me at funerals and celebrations and every ordinary Tuesday for the rest of our lives, except she's not here and she never planned to be here because she's been planning a different life entirely. I hang up with Michael and immediately call Sarah, needing to hear her voice, needing to understand how someone can sound so convincing while lying so completely, and she answers on the third ring with that breathless quality that suggests she's been enjoying herself in ways that have nothing to do with emergency client meetings. David, sweetheart, how are you holding up? She asks. And I can hear waves in the background, actual ocean waves, not the sound of a conference room or office emergency or any other environment that would explain her absence from her husband's most difficult week. I've been thinking about you constantly. I know how hard this must be. It's been difficult, I say, which is perhaps the greatest understatement in the history of marriage. The funeral was yesterday. I wish you could have been there. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. This client situation just keeps getting more complicated. They're demanding round-the-clock attention, and you know how important this account is for my promotion, she says. And I wonder if she practiced this conversation, if she rehearsed her lies while applying sunscreen, if she and Marcus laughed about her grieving husband while planning their next romantic dinner. Where are you right now? I ask, even though I know the answer, even though I'm looking at photographic evidence of her location, but I need to hear her lie to my face, need to understand the depths of her deception. At the office, of course, it's crazy here, wall-to-wall meetings, she says without hesitation, as if lying to her grieving husband is as natural as breathing. As if years of marriage vows mean nothing when weighed against a tropical vacation with her affair partner. The sound of waves gets louder, and I hear a man's laughter in the background, rich and satisfied. The kind of laughter that comes from someone who's getting exactly what he wants. And Sarah must hear it too, because she suddenly sounds flustered, starts talking faster about client deadlines and impossible schedules and how much she misses me. I should let you go, I say, my voice carefully neutral, maintaining the performance of trusting husband even though trust is now impossible. Take care of your work emergency. I love you, she says, words that used to mean everything and now mean nothing. Words she's probably said to Marcus while they watched the sunset together. Words that have become just another lie in a relationship built on lies I was too naive to recognize. After I hang up, I sit in my father's study surrounded by evidence of what a real marriage looks like. Surrounded by 35 years of love letters and anniversary cards and photographs that document two people choosing each other again and again. Through good times and bad times, through sickness and health, through every challenge that life threw at them. My parents never took separate vacations, never had secrets from each other, never chose individual happiness over shared commitment, and looking at their love story now, I understand what I lost when I lost my father, but also what I never really had with Sarah despite 5 years of believing we were building something permanent together. I'm standing in front of my father's desk, looking at a photo of him and my mother on their wedding day, both of them so young and hopeful and completely committed to the life they were promising to build together, and I realize that I've been trying to create that same kind of marriage with someone who was never capable of that kind of love. Someone who sees marriage as a stepping stone rather than a destination. The moment of clarity hits me like cold water, sharp and sudden and completely sobering, washing away years of willful blindness and desperate hope and naive trust, and I understand that I am not just grieving my father's death, I am grieving the death of my marriage, the death of my dreams, the death of the future I thought we were building together. But unlike my father's death, which was sudden and unexpected and completely beyond my control, my marriage's death is something I can respond to, something I can manage strategically, something where I have choices about how the ending unfolds, and I realize that I have 2 weeks of grief leave to plan the rest of my life while Sarah believes I'm still her devoted, trusting, easily manipulated husband. I will not waste another day mourning someone who stopped loving me months ago. I will not spend another night wondering why she seems distant when I now know exactly where her attention has been focused. I will not continue building a future with someone who has already decided our future together is over. The private investigator's card that my divorce attorney friend Tom Richardson gave me last year after his own messy divorce is still in my wallet, a precaution I never thought I'd need, but kept anyway, because Tom said you never really know someone until you divorce them. And I realize that I'm about to learn who Sarah really is beneath the loving wife performance she's been giving me. 2 weeks to document everything, to protect myself financially, to build a case that will ensure she can't manipulate the narrative the way she's been manipulating our marriage. 2 weeks to transform from naive victim into strategic survivor. 2 weeks to plan my comeback while she's planning our destruction. I am done being the trusting husband, done being the reliable provider, done being the man who makes excuses for her behavior and overlooks her lies and enables her betrayal through willful ignorance. And I am ready to become the kind of man my father raised me to be. Strong, principled, and absolutely unwilling to accept disrespect from anyone, especially someone who promised to love and honor me for the rest of our lives. The private investigator's office is exactly what you'd expect from someone who specializes in documenting adultery and financial fraud, all dark wood and leather chairs, and the kind of expensive discretion that comes with charging premium rates for premium results. And Jack Murphy looks like Central Casting's idea of a former cop turned private eye, gray hair, and knowing eyes, and the sort of competent professionalism that makes you understand why Tom Richardson recommended him so highly. "I'm sorry for your loss," Jack says after I explain the situation, his voice carrying genuine sympathy that somehow makes this whole situation feel more real, more permanent. "And I'm sorry you're dealing with this on top of everything else. But I have to say, the timing actually works in our favor because she's being careless, overconfident, posting evidence of her activities in real time. We spend 2 hours going through everything I know, every detail I can remember about Sarah's changing behavior over the past 6 months, every lie she told about work emergencies and late meetings and business trips, and Jack takes notes with the methodical precision of someone who's seen this story play out hundreds of times before, someone who knows exactly how these situations unfold when trust dies and greed takes over. The vacation photos are just the beginning," Jack explains while pulling up Sarah's social media accounts on his computer. "We need to document the financial aspects, the workplace relationship, the timeline of deception, everything that will matter when you're sitting across from her divorce attorney trying to protect your assets. The credit card statements tell a story I was too trusting to read. Months of charges at restaurants I've never been to, boutique purchases that never appeared in our closet, hotel rooms in cities where Sarah claimed to be working alone, a paper trail of deception that stretches back 6 months, coinciding perfectly with Marcus's arrival at her agency. She's been planning this for a while," Jack says, pointing to a pattern of charges that shows increasing financial separation, money moved to personal accounts, expensive purchases that suggest someone preparing for a lifestyle change. This wasn't a spontaneous affair, this was a strategic exit plan. Marcus Chen's background check reveals exactly what I expected. Married father of 2, previous workplace relationships that ended badly, a pattern of targeting married women for affairs that advance his career while destroying their marriages, the kind of predator who sees vulnerability as opportunity and marriage vows as obstacles to overcome rather than respect. "His wife doesn't know yet," Jack explains, showing me photos of Marcus's family at their daughter's soccer game, a woman who trusts her husband the way I trusted mine, children who have no idea their father is destroying another family for his own pleasure. But she will, and when she does, the workplace situation becomes untenable for both of them. The company's employee handbook is very clear about relationships between colleagues, especially relationships that involve deception and could create liability issues, and Jack has already identified 3 other women who left the agency after brief relationships with Marcus, creating a pattern of predatory behavior that HR will have to address once it becomes public knowledge. "Your wife thinks she's special," Jack says with the weary tone of someone who's seen this story too many times. "She thinks she's different from his other victims. I think he's going to leave his wife for her, but men like Marcus don't leave comfortable marriages for their affair partners. They just move on to the next victim when the current situation becomes inconvenient." Tom Richardson's office is a reminder of why I chose to become financially independent rather than rely on family money, all marble and mahogany, and the kind of tasteful luxury that costs more than most people's annual salary. But Tom himself is surprisingly down to earth for someone who charges $800 an hour to handle high net worth divorces. The prenup is solid. Tom explains after reviewing the agreement Sarah and I signed 5 years ago, back when we were young and in love and certain that our marriage would last forever. Adultery clause is ironclad, infidelity forfeits any claim to premarital assets. And with your father's recent death, the inheritance protection becomes crucial. The timing of my father's death, horrible as it sounds, actually works in my favor because the estate settlement hasn't been finalized yet, meaning Sarah has no claim to assets that would have become marital property if my father had died after her affair was discovered, and the inheritance will remain completely protected regardless of how the divorce unfolds. She's going to claim emotional abandonment, Tom predicts with the confidence of someone who's handled hundreds of these cases. She'll say your grief made you unavailable, distant, neglectful of her emotional needs, standard strategy for cheating spouses who want to paint themselves as victims rather than villains. But the evidence Jack is gathering tells a different story, a story of calculated deception and strategic betrayal that began long before my father's death. And by the time Sarah returns from her tropical vacation, I'll have documentation of every lie, every secret meeting, every dollar spent on her affair, everything needed to ensure she can't rewrite history to make herself the injured party. I return to work 3 days early, telling my colleagues that staying busy helps with the grief, which is actually true, in a way because focusing on strategic planning helps distract from the emotional devastation of losing both my father and my marriage in the same week. And the response from my team is exactly what I expected. Sympathy, support, gentle questions about how I'm holding up. Take it easy. My managing partner, Robert Hartwell, says during our private meeting, his hand on my shoulder in the paternal way that reminds me why I chose this firm, why I've worked so hard to earn respect here. Grief isn't something you can schedule around, and we'll support you through whatever you need. The conversation with my assistant, Rebecca, is more delicate because I need information without revealing too much about my situation. But she's worked for me for 3 years and knows me well enough to understand when something is seriously wrong. Sarah called yesterday asking about your schedule. Rebecca mentions casually while going through my appointments. Wanted to know when you'd be back in the office. Seemed surprised you were returning early. Did she say why she needed to know? I ask, keeping my voice neutral while making a mental note that Sarah is monitoring my movements, possibly coordinating her return with Marcus to ensure their story remains consistent. Just that she wanted to plan something special for when you got back. Rebecca says with the kind of warm smile that makes me realize how many people are going to be shocked when they learn about the divorce. How many colleagues and friends assumed we had the perfect marriage. The office gossip network is remarkably efficient when properly motivated, and within 2 days of my return, subtle inquiries about workplace relationships and company policies have generated exactly the intelligence I expected. Sarah and Marcus's affair is already common knowledge among their colleagues, whispered about in break rooms and discussed over drinks after work. Everyone knows, my friend Lisa from the legal department confirms over lunch, her expression sympathetic but not surprised. Apparently, they've been pretty obvious about it, leaving together, showing up wearing similar clothes, the kind of thing that makes people uncomfortable because they assume someone's going to get hurt. The someone who got hurt, of course, was me, but I'm beginning to understand that being hurt and being defeated are two different things, and while I can't control the pain of betrayal, I can absolutely control how I respond to it, how I protect myself, how I ensure that Sarah's choices have consequences that extend beyond just ending our marriage. Marcus's wife Jennifer discovers the affair exactly the way I planned, through an anonymous email containing screenshots of their vacation photos and a gentle suggestion that she might want to review her husband's recent credit card statements, and her response is swift and devastating. Immediate confrontation, temporary separation, and a very angry phone call to Marcus's boss about company liability issues. She's filing for divorce, Jack reports 2 days later, his tone satisfied in the way of someone whose plan is working perfectly. Took the kids to her mother's house, froze their joint accounts, hired Patricia Goldman to represent her. Patricia Goldman is the kind of divorce attorney that cheating husbands have nightmares about, known for taking men to the cleaners while maintaining complete professional composure, and the fact that Jennifer hired her suggests that Marcus's comfortable suburban life is about to become very expensive and very public. The workplace consequences follow quickly because companies can't afford to ignore patterns of sexual harassment and hostile work environment claims, especially when one of the participants is currently going through a messy divorce where workplace behavior will be scrutinized by opposing counsel. Marcus has been transferred to the Chicago office, Lisa reports with barely concealed satisfaction, effective immediately, and Sarah's been moved to a different department, reporting to someone else. Basically, they've been separated to limit liability exposure, which means that when Sarah returns from her tropical paradise, she'll discover that her affair partner has been sent to another city and her career trajectory has been permanently altered, consequences that will make her vacation seem very expensive in retrospect. I spend the weekend before Sarah's return visiting my family, letting my mother cook for me while we go through more of my father's belongings, allowing myself to grieve honestly for the first time since receiving that devastating phone call, processing the loss of the most important relationship in my life while preparing to end the relationship that I thought was second most important. Your father would be proud of how you're handling this, my mother says while we're organizing his papers, her voice carrying the kind of quiet strength that comes from 35 years of marriage to a truly good man. He always said that character gets tested in the worst moments, and you're showing real character. If only she knew what I was really handling, but I can't tell her about Sarah's betrayal yet. Can't add that burden to her grief. Can't let her know that while she was burying her husband, her daughter-in-law was celebrating with another man, but someday I'll tell her everything and she'll understand why this had to happen. Sunday evening, I prepare our house for Sarah's return, making sure everything looks exactly like she expects, like a grief-stricken husband who's been missing his wife terribly, who can't wait to hold her again and share his pain and lean on her strength during this difficult time. The printed photos from her vacation are hidden in my desk drawer, along with copies of the financial documents and phone records and everything else Jack has gathered, and evidence that will be revealed at exactly the right moment to maximum effect. But for now, I need to maintain the performance of trust, need to let her believe that her deception remains undetected. She arrives home Monday evening, glowing with health and happiness, sun-kissed and relaxed in the way that comes from a week of being pampered and appreciated, and she throws her arms around me with enthusiastic affection that might have been convincing if I didn't know she'd been throwing those same arms around Marcus for the past 10 days. "I missed you so much," she says, her face buried in my shoulder, her voice carrying just the right note of wifely concern. "How are you doing, sweetheart? I know this week must have been terrible." "It was difficult," I say, which is absolutely true, just not in the way she thinks, "but I'm glad you're home. I need to tell you about the funeral, about everything that happened while you were handling your work emergency." She listens with perfect attention while I describe the service, the family gathering, the overwhelming response from people whose lives my father touched, and her expressions of sympathy and regret seem so genuine that I almost admire her acting ability, the way she can project caring while feeling nothing, the way she can lie with her whole face while planning my destruction. "I'm sorry I couldn't be there," she says, taking my hands in hers, looking directly into my eyes with the kind of sincere remorse that would have broken my heart if I still believed anything she said. "The client situation was impossible to manage remotely, but I should have found a way to support you." "It's okay," I tell her, maintaining my own performance. "I understand that work sometimes has to come first, but I'm glad the emergency is resolved now." "Actually," she says, her voice taking on a different tone, more hesitant, like someone preparing to deliver difficult news, "there might be some changes coming at work, restructuring, new reporting relationships, the kind of thing that could affect my career trajectory." The beginning of her exit strategy, I realize, the setup for explaining why she might need space, why our marriage might be facing challenges, why she might need time to figure out what she really wants, all the standard manipulation tactics that cheating spouses use to make their betrayal seem like mutual relationship problems. "We'll figure it out together," I tell her, playing my role perfectly. "Whatever happens, we'll handle it as a team." She smiles with what looks like relief but feels like guilt, and I wonder if part of her wishes she could go back in time and choose differently. Choose loyalty over excitement, choose commitment over passion, choose the man who would have died for her over the man who will discard her the moment she becomes inconvenient. But it's too late for that now because trust, once broken, can never be fully repaired. And I am no longer the naive husband who made excuses for her distance, who ignored obvious signs of deception, who chose willful blindness over painful truth. Tomorrow, I'll begin the final phase of my strategy, the careful revelation of her betrayal in a setting where she can't deny the evidence, can't manipulate the narrative. I can't escape the consequences of choices that seemed so exciting when she was making them in a tropical paradise with someone else's husband. Tuesday evening, I suggest dinner with my family, framing it as necessary support during my grief, and Sarah agrees with the kind of resigned acceptance that suggests she knows family obligations are important even when they're inconvenient, even when they interfere with whatever exit strategy she's been planning. My mother's house is filled with photos from my father's life, including several from his funeral that my sister took to document the people who came to pay their respects, and I've carefully arranged for the family slideshow that traditionally follows big gatherings, knowing that Sarah will be forced to smile and participate while photographic evidence of her absence speaks louder than any accusation I could make. "Sarah, we missed you at the service," my brother Michael says during cocktails, his tone genuinely warm because he still believes her work emergency story, still thinks she's the loving wife who supported me through this crisis. "David needed you there." "I know, I'm so sorry," Sarah responds with perfect regret. "The client situation was just impossible to handle remotely, worst possible timing. I felt terrible about missing it." The slideshow begins after dinner, my sister clicking through hundreds of photos that capture not just the funeral, but the entire week of family gathering, friends supporting each other, community rallying around my mother. And Sarah's complete absence becomes more obvious with each image, more difficult to explain, more impossible to justify. "This is everyone at the reception after the service," my sister explains, pointing out relatives Sarah has never met, family friends she's only heard about, the network of support that surrounded me while she was posting sunset cocktails on social media. David was so strong, he held everything together for all of us. I watch Sarah's face during the slideshow, see her growing discomfort as her absence becomes the elephant in the room, see her realizing that her work emergency story is becoming harder to maintain when faced with evidence of how much support I needed and didn't receive from the person who should have been closest to me. After the family dinner, back in our house, I pour Sarah a glass of wine and suggest we look at some photos from my father's personal collection, pictures I found while going through his effects, memories I want to share with her, because sharing grief is supposed to strengthen marriages. "I found something while I was cleaning out Dad's study," I tell her, reaching for the folder I've prepared. The one containing printed screenshots from her vacation alongside photos from my father's funeral, side-by-side comparison that makes the contrast unavoidable, undeniable, devastating. Her face goes white when she sees the evidence. The champagne toast that happened while I was delivering my father's eulogy, the romantic beach walk that occurred while I was comforting my grieving mother, the couple's massage that was scheduled during the burial service, perfect documentation of choices that reveal character more clearly than any words ever could. "David, I can explain," she starts, but her voice is already shaking because we both know there is no explanation that makes this acceptable. No justification that transforms betrayal into anything other than what it is. "You were in Turks and Caicos with Marcus Chen while I was burying my father." I say, my voice calm and steady because anger is a luxury I can't afford right now, because strategic thinking requires emotional control. "You used my grief leave to vacation with your affair partner." The breakdown is immediate and complete. Tears and denials and desperate attempts to minimize what happened. But I let her exhaust herself with excuses before presenting the rest of the evidence. The financial records, the phone logs, the timeline that shows 6 months of calculated deception, the proof that this wasn't a moment of weakness but a sustained campaign of betrayal. "It didn't mean anything," she sobs, reaching for me with hands that held another man while I was mourning alone. "It was just escape, just fantasy. I was going to end it when I got back. I was going to tell you everything." But the evidence tells a different story, a story of someone who was planning her exit strategy long before my father died, someone who saw my grief as an opportunity rather than a crisis requiring support, someone who was never capable of the kind of love that sustains real marriages through real challenges. "I don't want your confession," I tell her, my voice steady and final. "I want you to pack your things and leave tonight. I want you to contact Tom Richardson tomorrow to begin divorce proceedings. I want you to understand that this marriage is over and there is no path back from what you've done." She begs and pleads and promises to change, swears the affair is over, claims she'll do anything to save our marriage. But I've learned the difference between remorse and regret, between genuine sorrow and manipulation designed to avoid consequences, and Sarah's tears are about losing security rather than losing love. Marcus is being transferred to Chicago, I tell her, watching her face crumble as she realizes her paradise is already ending. His wife found out, she's filing for divorce, and your company has separated you to avoid liability issues. The calculation in her eyes as she processes this information confirms everything I suspected about her motivations, the way she weighs losing her marriage against losing her affair partner, the way she realizes that her choice led to losing both security and excitement, that her gamble failed completely. She moves out that night, taking only personal belongings because the prenup is clear about adultery forfeiture, because years of strategic deception have left her with less than she brought to the marriage, because choices have consequences, and her choices led inevitably to this moment. The divorce proceedings are swift and final, aided by overwhelming evidence and Sarah's attorney's advice to accept the settlement rather than fight a battle she cannot win, and within 6 months our marriage is legally dissolved, our shared assets divided according to the agreement she signed when she believed our love would last forever. The therapy helps, sessions with Dr. Elizabeth Warner, who specializes in grief counseling and understands that I'm mourning multiple losses simultaneously, that losing a parent and discovering spousal betrayal creates complicated grief that requires professional guidance to process healthily. Betrayal trauma is real trauma. Dr. Warner explains during our third session. Your nervous system experienced this as a life-threatening event because trust is fundamental to human survival, and learning to trust again will take time and patience with yourself. My family's support is unwavering, my mother and siblings closing ranks around me the way families do when one member is wounded, providing comfort and practical help, and the kind of unconditional love that helps heal damage inflicted by conditional love that was never really love at all. Work becomes a refuge, the familiar challenge of financial analysis and strategic planning providing structure during emotional chaos, and my colleagues' respect for how I've handled personal crisis actually strengthens my professional reputation rather than damaging it. You've shown real grace under pressure. Robert Hartwell tells me during my year-end review, personal integrity that reflects well on our firm's values, and I think you're ready for greater leadership responsibilities. The promotion to senior partner includes equity stake and increased responsibility for client relationships, recognition that I've proven myself capable of handling complex challenges with strategic thinking and emotional stability, and the financial independence means I can build my new life on my own terms. Emma Richardson enters my life through my father's estate, the brilliant attorney handling complex business interests that require careful legal navigation, and our professional relationship develops slowly into friendship based on mutual respect and shared values about family and loyalty and the importance of keeping your word. She's nothing like Sarah. This woman who built her own successful practice from nothing, who takes care of her aging parents while managing demanding clients, who understands that real love means choosing someone every single day rather than just feeling passion during convenient moments. I've seen what betrayal does to families. Emma tells me during one of our long conversations about marriage and commitment, my practice is full of people who thought they knew their spouses, and I've learned that character matters more than chemistry, that reliability is sexier than excitement. Our courtship is deliberate and honest, built on friendship and shared experiences rather than desperate need or physical attraction alone. And when I propose 18 months after meeting her, it's with complete confidence that she understands marriage as a permanent commitment rather than a temporary convenience. The wedding is small and meaningful, attended by people who know our story and celebrate our choice to build something real together, and my mother cries happy tears while walking me down the aisle because she knows I've found the kind of partner my father would have approved of. Emma is already pregnant when we marry, carrying our daughter who will grow up understanding that love means faithfulness, that marriage means keeping promises, that family means supporting each other through every challenge life presents. Sarah's aftermath unfolds exactly as predicted. Marcus chose his family and his career over his affair partner, leaving her alone with the consequences of choices that seemed so exciting when she was making them, and her attempt to rebuild her life in a new city hasn't erased the reputation that follows her everywhere. The last I heard, she was working for a smaller agency, dating younger men who don't know her history, trying to create the Instagram perfect life that she thought would make her happy. But happiness built on lies and selfishness never lasts because it lacks the foundation of character that sustains real joy through real challenges. I visit my father's grave every month, bringing Emma and our daughter so he can meet the family he would have loved, telling him about the life I've built on the values he taught me. The way I learned to distinguish between people who love you and people who use you. I think he would be proud, Emma says while we're arranging flowers on his headstone, our daughter playing quietly among the autumn leaves. Proud that you chose healing over bitterness, growth over revenge, love over fear. Standing there in the cemetery where this story began, holding the hand of a woman who chose me every day for better or worse, watching our daughter discover the world with the fearless joy that comes from being deeply loved, I understand that my father's death taught me how to live, how to love, how to build the kind of marriage that honors the sacrifices previous generations made for their families. The grief for my father will never completely end, because love that deep leaves permanent marks on your heart, but the grief for my marriage with Sarah ended the moment I stopped mourning someone who was never worthy of my devotion. Stopped trying to save a relationship with someone who was incapable of real love. I used my healing time to mourn our marriage, to bury it properly, to grieve what I thought we had while accepting what we actually had, and that mourning process cleared space in my heart for the kind of love that lasts forever, the kind of marriage that would make my father proud, the kind of family that honors his memory by choosing faithfulness over convenience, commitment over passion, character over chemistry. This is how you rebuild after betrayal, not with revenge or bitterness, but with strategic wisdom that protects your future while honoring your past, with the understanding that some people will disappoint you, but others will exceed every expectation, with the knowledge that real love is worth waiting for and worth fighting for and worth building your entire life around. My wife used my grief leave to vacation with him, but I used my healing time to mourn our marriage and discover what authentic love actually looks like. And in the end, that education was worth every moment of pain because it taught me the difference between someone who says they love you and someone who actually loves you, and that difference has made all the difference in the world.